And so Red Bull have confirmed this morning that Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda will swap seats from next weekend's Japanese Grand Prix, insisting they've made the move to develop and protect Lawson. Well, for more on this, we're joined by Sky Sports F1 commentator David Croft. Thank you very much for speaking with us this morning, David. I mean, it wasn't a closely kept secret. We had Craig Slater on set here yesterday talking about this, but obviously we know the facts now. But what did you make of that decision as we learned it?
Red Bull's ruthless driver shuffle strikes again. Was Lawson's demotion fair? Here's the real story.
This was the story before the disqualifications of the two Ferraris and Pierre Gasly on Sunday nights in the paddock in China. What did I make of it? Instantly, I felt very sorry for Liam Lawson, who is a thoroughly nice guy, a supremely talented driver, someone who's been thrown into the pressure cooker environment of driving for Red Bull, and as you can see on your screens at the moment, didn't exactly thrive in that pressure cooker environment. Qualified last twice in the Grand Prix, crashed out in Australia, never looked like scoring a point in China. Did he deserve more time? Personally, I think he did, but I'm not on the inside at Red Bull, and what he would have benefited from for the next race is actually driving at a track where he's driven before, many times before in his Super Formula career when he was in Japan. What surprises me is that Yuki Tsunoda, to replace him, a driver that 2 races ago wasn't thought good enough to drive for that Red Bull seat, is now good enough to drive for that Red Bull seat. So is it a case of he has the talent and he can be a worthy teammate to Max Verstappen, or is it that Red Bull have got nobody else to turn to? And I think it's more the latter on that particular front rather than the former. As for Lawson, I think he will benefit Liam going back to Racing Bulls, an environment he knows better, a car that seems to be easier to drive from the outset, but probably hasn't got the peak potential of the RB21. And I hope he has a really strong weekend, because what I don't want to see is Liam Lawson suffer further decline as a result of this demotion and then edge his way out of Formula One, say like Nick de Vries did a few years ago when he was rushed into the Racing Bulls seat by a Red Bull team and a Red Bull driver development program that seems to have lost its way.
Liam Lawson has talent, but in Red Bull's system, talent alone isn't enough. He was thrown into a high-pressure seat with no real time to adapt, and instead of support, he got the axe. Now he's expected to rebuild his career at Racing Bulls, just like others before him. The real issue isn't Lawson. It's that Red Bull's driver development program has become a revolving door, and it's hard to say if they even have a long-term plan anymore.
Yeah, in fact, picking up on that, and that's exactly the point and the worry, isn't it? You mentioned, yes, you feel that they could have given him more time. I mean, they made the decision after just 2 races. And talking about, I guess, his mental health and his confidence, they say, Red Bull, it's to protect Lawson, but you've hinted towards this potentially maybe doing more actually harm than help.
Well, it will protect him if he goes back to RB and Racing Bulls and does a good job. But if he doesn't, then where does Liam Lawson go from there? And how does he get over the stigma of being dropped from, what he would have seen as the ultimate drive, being part of that Red Bull driver development program for many years, so soon? It's not the first time Red Bull have dropped a driver so quickly. I think Robert Dornbos back in the day had 3 races. Antonio Liuzzi had 4 races. Sebastian Bourdais was an IndyCar champion and a worthy driver, and he was dropped pretty quickly as well. They are ruthless, Red Bull, when they're making these decisions. But what I'd love to know, Hayley, is how they made the decision about Liam Lawson in the first place. They have all the data from RB. It's their sister team. They can compare Max Verstappen to Liam Lawson, Yuki Tsunoda to Checo Perez, as it was last year. They've got all the data they need to make the right decision, but they seem to keep making the wrong decision. Checo Perez didn't exactly flourish from the Miami Grand Prix in 2023 onwards. Liam Lawson seemed like a decent appointment from the outside, but what data did they use? And why is it now after 2 races they're going to discard that data and bring in Yuki Tsunoda, who was the driver that they didn't think worthy of and haven't thought worthy of for some time now? I'm sure Liam Lawson will do a super job at racing bulls. Will he ever get the chance again at Red Bull? I doubt it very much. But that, of course, depends on how Yuki Tsunoda gets on, because there's no guarantees that he's going to shine straight away. And maybe that's what Red Bull are expecting and wanting from their drivers as they chase Constructors' Championship points and maybe another title.
Red Bull says they want to protect Lawson, but is dropping him after 2 races really the best way to do that? Their system demands instant success, yet history shows that even talented drivers struggle with that pressure. If Red Bull keeps discarding drivers this quickly, how many promising talents will they lose before they realize their approach might be doing more harm than good?
I mean, as you've hinted towards there, I mean, we've seen Red Bull drop drivers, I mean, mid-season before. It's a theme. Do we worry about, their approach? Is this becoming a bit of a concern now?
Well, someone said to me the other day, have they taken their eye off the ball? And it was a bad joke, but they probably have. They have jettisoned a whole heap of drivers. Alex Albon and Pierre Gasly, Daniel Ricciardo came and went, and then came and went again. Sergio Perez was brought in and then jettisoned at the end of last season because his performances just weren't up to it. They had at one time the best driver development program on the planet, but maybe they're a bit like Chelsea. They signed too many players. Their substitutes bench was creaking under the weight, and they had to offload because they couldn't find spaces for all their drivers. And now they probably haven't got that conveyor belt of talent coming through and ready for a seat, at the top team at this particular time. It takes a bit of time if you're not a Max Verstappen, if you're not a Kimi Antonelli, if you're not a Lewis Hamilton, to ease yourself into the world of Formula One. You sometimes need a bit of time. Fernando Alonso had it, of course, in his debut year with Minardi, the team that went on to become Racing Bulls. So let's see what happens in the future. But I do think that Helmut Marko and Christian Horner need to sit down and say, right, where is our conveyor belt of talent? Who is coming through? And how do we make a long-term plan now to stop making knee-jerk reactions that don't do the team much good and certainly don't do the drivers any good?
Dropping underperforming drivers is one thing, but Red Bull's approach is starting to look more reckless than ruthless. Their inconsistency in backing talent has led to a revolving door of drivers, and in the long run, that instability could be a bigger problem than any one driver's performance. If they don't rebuild a proper development pipeline, they'll be stuck making reactionary choices instead of strategic ones.
Yeah, very, very true. I like the kind of football analogy there. I kind of get that now. So we spoke to Craig Slater, as we do on here often, about a number of Max Verstappen's teammates struggling at Red Bull. What will be the key then for Tsunoda to avoid joining that list? How is he going to succeed?
Well, I suppose the glib remark is don't qualify last for the home Grand Prix. He might have a sensational weekend, and I hope he does. We go back to 2012, don't we, for the last time we had a Japanese driver on the podium, and that was Kamui Kobayashi at the Japanese Grand Prix. It would be a fairy tale to see Yuki Tsunoda get on the podium in front of his home fans, and I'm sure that's what Honda, who are Tsunoda's backers, are wanting and secretly hoping for, and why they've probably had quite a big part and played quite a big part in getting Yuki Tsunoda that seat for this particular race. There's no coincidence that it is the Japanese Grand Prix coming up next. But thinking long term, if Yuki gets a long term, he's got to get to within a couple of tenths of a second in qualifying of his teammate, Max Verstappen. He's got to score consistent points and be there to take the chances when they come his way. Don't think about beating Max Verstappen yet, although I'm sure Yuki would dearly love to do that. Max is the best driver on the grid currently. He's not in the best car, but he is the best driver on the grid. And Yuki, I'll give another analogy, needs to play the race, not the teammate. In darts, you say you're up against Luke Littler. You don't play the man, you play the board. 501 down to a double finish as quickly as you can, and forget about who you're playing. That's what Yuki Tsunoda needs to do. Forget about who his teammate is. Just go out and do the maximum he can each and every session, every qualifying session, and every race. And that maybe might ease the pressure that he's now going to be put under, because there is a huge pressure difference between racing for Racing Bulls, despite doing very well and being very unlucky not to score points in the first two races, and racing for Red Bull, who are expectant of championship wins, championship poles, and championships.
This isn't just a step up for Yuki, it's a completely different battlefield. At Racing Bulls, he had space to grow, but at Red Bull, there's only one expectation: results. He doesn't need to beat Max, but he has to be close enough to be useful in strategy and consistently bring home points. If he qualifies at the back or fails to keep up, he'll be out as fast as Lawson was. Red Bull has shown they aren't afraid to make cutthroat moves, and Yuki is stepping into the most high-pressure seat in the sport. The question isn't just if he's ready, but if Red Bull is even willing to wait for him to be.